So Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the olive tree, with the knowledge of life and death, the knowledge of fornication, and with that desire. Now Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. This is a willful corruption. It means I have purchased a man against the Lord. The wages of sin is death. Sin pays us with death. God is a spirit. His word is spirit. Dwelling in the word of God is to dwell in spiritual life, in the light of life. When Eve disobeyed the word of God, she was then in sin, in the shadow of death. And so in death, right, sin pays us in death. In death, she purchased a man. Cain is the seed of the accuser, of the deceiver, of the serpent. So I have purchased Cain, and it's against the Lord, because it was against the word of God and the will of God. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Abel is the son of Adam. Abel is mentioned first, right? Cain was born first, but Abel is mentioned first now because he is first before God, because he is the son of Adam, who is of the son of Adam and Eve, the creation of God by the will of God. Cain is of the serpent by the will of the serpent, right? Whose wisdom, full of wisdom, was corrupted by his beauty. And so desiring to be as God, to create man in his image, he deceived the woman and brought his seed, created man in his image. And so Abel is mentioned first because he is first before God in the spiritual sense. Abel is the keeper of the sheep. The son receives the inheritance of the father. Adam named the beasts of the field. He gave the animals names. They were brought to him to see which would be a good helper before Eve, the woman, was taken of him. So he's the keeper of the sheep. He has the inheritance of his father, Adam. Cain is a worker of the ground. The ground is cursed. His father, the serpent, Arur, the cursed, who was cursed for sin, and the ground being linked to the curse, Cain receives of the inheritance of his father, of the curse. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. When the children would bring offerings before their father, they would seek the blessing and the inheritance. But the eldest is supposed to receive the blessing and the inheritance. Cain willfully brings the offering first, when Abel is first before God, right? Because he is of Adam and Eve. And Cain willfully goes first. He also brings an offering of the fruit of the ground. The ground is cursed. So he brings an unholy offering to the holy God, because it is both in rebellion, right, against his position, that he's not happy, and his desire to be raised above Cain, that all his actions as his father are in corruption. Abel brings an offering of the flock, his father's inheritance, that is good and pleasing before the Father. As in Jacob and Esau, Esau was the eldest, but Jacob supplanted him and went before his father, disguised as Esau, and received of the blessing and the inheritance. So for Cain, he had no regard for his offering. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said, "Why are you angry? Why is your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not well, sin is crouching at your door." The word means stretched out, like lying out, like the serpent, right? The father of sin, his father, right? At his door, it's desire for you. Eve means desire. Hava, Sava, desire. And it was by desire that what she was deceived of the lies, which are corruption. And so in Cain's own desire, I guess partly because of his stature, he was moved to corruption. Cain spoke to his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. Cain rose up after he spoke to his brother. He rose up symbolizing he was in rebellion. He was going to supplant his brother and kill him. But he also rose up after talking, because we're told the seed of the fallen angels were the men of renown. They were giants. And so he was speaking because he's a giant. He was crouched over, and then he rose up after speaking to him. And so for the sin, God drives him out, and Cain says, I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Because the day 6 creation, the male and female created on day 6, God said, be fruitful and multiply, procreate, and have dominion over the world. They were without the spiritual word of God, that is life. They were sent forth to procreate, to fornicate, have dominion over the world, to live and die. And so Cain, who is a giant, when he goes out in the midst of them, they will know that he is not one of them, and it's their dominion, and so they will kill him. But God sets a mark on him that they know that he is under the protection of God. And so he goes out, and he meets a wife and conceives and has children and builds a city. And so Adam knew his wife again. She bore a son, called his name Seth, and she said, God has appointed. Right? When she received Cain, she says, I have gotten, right? By her sin. She is purchased. Sin pays us with death, by death, right? But when she has Seth, God has appointed me another offspring instead of Abel. So in the generations of Adam, Cain is not mentioned, and Abel is also not mentioned, but it's a genealogy tree of father, son, of life going on. So it says Adam had Seth. Seth lived and fathered Enosh. Enosh lived and fathered Kenan. Kenan lived and fathered Mahalalel. So that is why Abel is not in the genealogy. But as we've seen previously, Cain had children. So that would not explain why. But for final confirmation, the blessed Peter said Cain is of the evil one.